So I'm very happy to welcome Malin Andersson from the city of Gothenburg. And Malin, about 1 year ago, actually, you spoke when we had a conference all about freight transport in Gothenburg here. It was just over 1 year ago. So I know you're not going to talk specifically about that, but I'm looking forward to hearing about your view about how to make change a reality in that sense, because I know that's something you've worked with a lot. So the floor is yours.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you, Michael, for inviting me again then, and thank you, everybody. Just want to have a look at you because you make me so nervous. I just want to see if you're going to kill me, but I don't think you are. Well, I'm from the public sector, and I must stress how crucial close collaboration with academia and with business is if we are to meet and to overcome the societal challenges that we are facing. So I very, very much enjoy. I very much use, and I get very inspired by our collaborations with Chalmers. So thank you for letting us in, and thank you for co-producing knowledge together with us. Yeah, I mean that, thank you. Well, you know, transportation systems are essential to our lives. They are the basis on our modern society. And if you hadn't considered your way or your modes of travel tomorrow when we have the top meeting, I think you should do that. If you don't want to get stuck anywhere. So when something happens in the transport system, it affects us enormously. And still, we know that burning fossil fuels contributes to global warming. And we know that for a long time. I took a master's degree in environmental science in '98. And we knew that then. So why do we continue? We know what is needed to be done. Why do not new solutions penetrate the systems? Are we totally unable to change? Cecilia, yes and no. Well, and so I have been thinking about this quite a lot. What are the obstacles to achieving sustainable transports? How can these obstacles be found, and how can they be overcome? And I was really stuck with this last winter, and I spoke to John, who gave an introduction speak this morning, and he introduced me to an article by, I think his name is Franz Giels. Is that right? Correct? Yeah. And he said, well, I immediately recognized my own experience and my frustration, and my collaboration with science gave me new insights, so I'm very happy for that today. Because Franz Giels stated that the transportation sector is filled by socio-technical systems. They consist of a cluster of aligned elements like market standards, vehicle, fuel production, distribution, aftermarket business, with urban design, architecture, infrastructure, spatial planning, with research, knowledge, institutes, powertrain development, and regulation, financing, tax, incentives, policy, institutional frameworks, and then culture, behavior, symbolic value, and a long list of factors that you had, Cecilia. So, change in policy, like we say, increased cycling in the city of Gothenburg, do not penetrate if there is no change in spatial planning and behavior. Yeah, of course. It doesn't matter if you change powertrains if you do not have fuel production and distribution. Yeah, makes sense. And change in behavior doesn't penetrate if there is no like tax incentives or return on investment and symbolic value, right? No? Yeah? Yeah. So also when we have a really good new technical solution, it's quite effectively pulled back by the existing socio-technical regime. So we've been talking, think outside the box, like new solutions. Yeah, thinking outside this blue bubble challenges so many perspectives, so many individual values. There are so many lock-in effects and path dependencies that keep us trapped in this existing blue bubble. And you say, and we say, think outside the box. And I say, that is not enough. I have been trying to, for 20 years, thinking outside this box working with architecture, spatial planning, infrastructure planning, management, mobility solutions. And I have implemented quite a lot of very small solutions. And once we together have cracked one kind of box, thought outside it, we immediately found ourselves trapped in a big one, just on another level. How many of you have heard about Ljubljana? Yeah, it's a classical example. So somehow, I sometimes feel I've been like trapped in the Russian doll. I got outside the box and I found myself in a bigger one. So for each obstacle you overcome, there is a new one, a bigger one. Yeah. And then John and Franz GLC also talk about transition. Like transition is the shift from one socio-technical regime into another one. So changing from diesel engine to electric engine is not solemnly a technical shift. It is a social technical regime shift. That is what makes it so difficult. Because it demands changes in a manifold of social groups with individual values who reinforce and reproduce the current system. So I really would like to, together with you, increase this knowledge about obstacles for system innovations. How can these obstacles be overcome? And what could possibly be more interesting if we want a real true transition? So let us discuss this together, and I will give you like 3 headlines when I'm with Chalmers. Of course, human capital. You're an education producer, aren't you? That comes to us later on as a working force. And if technical experts do not possess competencies and knowledge to perform the deliverables differently than from before, the capacity to drive forward thinking in innovative designs and plans will, of course, be limited. So just a question, what kind of knowledge and what kind of tools do you provide your students, our future working force, with? Is it old-time, unsustainable solutions? Or is it new tools and a capacity to co-create? Do Chalmers and other academic institutions have a responsibility for this at all? The second one, which is very much my everyday life, is bold political action. And this is a dilemma in our time. Government and transportation leaders can introduce very strong incentives in order to increase sustainable mobility, but it's very, very tough. So if you introduce congestion charge, for example, which is a great innovation, it decreases volumes with about 10%, then you will have grumpy old men demonstrating in front of your office for the rest of your life. And this left picture shows a former parking lot in Ljubljana in Slovenia, a beautiful city. You should go there if you haven't been. And the mayor stated at the Civitas conference in 2015 that removing all parking spaces in the center of Ljubljana was my most difficult political decision of all times. Can you imagine what kind of decisions he had to handle? And removing parking spaces was the most difficult one. It was a hugely unpopular decision, but he was re-elected and opinion turned in his favor. And you have 50% of the parking lots are underneath in a garage in this area. And this one, you recognize New York? You know about the Gales Architects project in New York when they just turned car surfaces into livable urban space through simple and short-term investment like painting the streets. And the New Yorkers were very, very pleased. You can see in the picture. But the leaders became ready to make permanent and further changes only after 18 months of business and impact follow-up, and they have still not made this permanent. So, well, public policy agenda setting is more easily done based on political consensus, of course. And political consensus is usually built upon a broad and controlling public acceptance, which means it's built upon the existing socio-technical regime. So bold action, which we really need at the moment, means you might not be re-elected, or you actually spit on in the street. So this is a dilemma. And for me, in a public administration, we need to handle complex questions where I think we can be better on with more science. What incentives could be suggested for political decisions, and in what timing? Because the timing is everything in this. Are there actions that could prepare or like kind of pave the way for a disruptive policymaking? And for my third headlines, maybe Living Lab is such an action. Because we need to approach and we need to overcome this reluctant power of inconvenience, which usually is paired with a fear of the horrifying unknown. So, you know, when we try to change from a diesel bus system to an electric one, this seemed totally exhaustive and thus totally impossible to manage. Not for everybody, but for the broad majority. Public feared that new silent buses appearing dangerously from behind would just kill you if you ask somebody in the street. Engineers and bus operators, they were really worried about liability and circulation times. They didn't know if it would work out. They didn't have the mathematical models for doing the timetables. Architects, they worried about unattractive charging stations. And the bus drivers, they were quite uncomfortable with new vehicles and new technology. So against such clamor, it's very difficult for leaders to make decisions concerning procurement or investments. Of course, what would you have done if everybody tells you it's not possible from all the way around in this existing socio-technical regime? So the Electricity Living Lab, how many have traveled with the line 55? Yeah, I expect 100%. For 2 years, 3 years, 4 years, we've been testing on a smaller scale. It's still commercial. It's a new service, but with real customers and with a really broad stakeholder engagement. And the results, show greater increases in trust and willingness from, which I think is very interesting, from both passengers and from stakeholders. And they want now a system shift. So the unknown, the former unknown, is now well known and also requested. So, for conclusions perhaps, for now, I think that to be able to meet our societal challenges, we need to try solutions in reality, to make them less frightening. We want to try test them in real contexts. But we also need to address innovation like a complex problem that needs a diversity of solutions, not complicated problem, not only complicated problems that need to be solved solemnly. We need to break silos. You were talking about that, Cecilia, to understand the regime questions. We need to co-produce knowledge if we are to reach impact. Because the obstacles could as well be a tax incentive as a technical standard. But without trying it in a real context, we might not realize that. We just wonder why the solution gets trapped in the valley of death. So in Gothenburg, we are very fortunate to have a huge, you are among them, of course, knowledge capacity in the transport field. And these projects, together with you, shows that. and arenas like area of advanced, closer, safer, Mr. Urban Future, and this, my favorite place, Lindholmen Science Park. These are arenas that enable this. So we are able, if we want, we can meet, we can co-create our sustainable socio-technical transport regime to come. So thank you for listening, and thank you for your co-creation.